doing chapter 26, and I'm just going to adjust this here for a minute if I can. I don't know. Here we go. Alright. So this is the Baron von Trump series, and it's the one on the Underground Journey. And I'm going to be having this in that playlist for the journey. I'll put a link to the playlist below. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Excuse me, I try to be consistent, but sometimes I have setbacks, so here we go. How the quarrymen of King Geldas cleft asunder the crystal prison of the little man with the frozen smile. My bitter disappointment, and how I bore it. Wonderful happenings of the night that followed. Bulger again proves himself to be an animal of extraordinary sagacity. Sages. I don't know. Bulger and I had a little appetite for the dainty breakfast of stewed sweetbreads which the Caldy corpse set before us the next morning. For I knew, and he half suspected, that something important was going to happen, being nothing less than the cleaving asunder of the crystal cell which had held the little chimpanzee a prisoner for so many centuries. Excuse me. I'm just going to adjust the page. Okay. Walking beside the merry Princess Shinabul, who was delighted to know that his frigid majesty, her father, had at last yielded to my wishes. Bulger and I set out for the beautiful ice grotto. Behind us walked Phosphority Fizz and Glacier Behoy, with instructions from the king to supervise the cleaving asunder of the block of ice. And after them came 4 of King Gladys's quarrymen, 2 bearing flint axes with helves of polished bone, and 2 carrying the flint wedges to be used in the work. We soon entered Shinabul's grotto, and the task was at once entered upon. It seemed to me I could almost see the little man with the frozen smile wink his eyelids at the quarrymen set their wedges in place and began to mark the line of fracture. But of course, dear friends, you know what an imagination I have, especially when I get worked up over anything. So you must take what I say sometimes with a grain of salt. Let me scooch this up. Although, as a rule, you may accept my statements with childlike confidence, with such wonderful skill did the Qualtiquerpian quarrymen use their axes and wedges, that in a few moments, to my great delight, the huge block of ice fell asunder in perfect halves. In one of the little man-like creature lay on his side like a casting mold. I made haste to lift him out and wrap him in a soft pelt, which I had brought along for that purpose, and then I turned to retrace my steps to my chamber, where I intended to begin at once my study of whatever inscriptions should be found on his curious collar. Remember, little Baron, said Glacier Boy, by express command of his frigid majesty, the little man with the frozen smile must be returned to his crystal cell tomorrow morning at this very hour. I bowed assent, and then, having accompanied Princess Shinabul as far as the bottom of the grand staircase leading to the ice palace, I turned away and and was soon in the privacy of my own apartment. Now came for me one of the bitterest disappointments of my life, but I submitted with a good grace, for it was fit punishment visited upon me for my foolish vanity in striving to unearth some older record of the human race than had yet been done by any of the great searchers and philosophers, not even excepting that master of masters, Don Strefa Falafidder Genagerius Fum. Okay. Sorry about that. It's a new name for me there. Know then, dear friends, that the quaint collar made up of gold and silver coins or discs, cunningly linked together, which encircled the animal's neck, contained not a single word or letter of any language, the undersides being quite blank, and the upper merely having roughly carved outlines of an object which might possibly have been intended for the sun. Wrapping the animal up in the soft pelt, I laid him in the corner of my divan and betook myself to the palace of his. Okay, next page. Frigid Majesty, where I frankly informed King Geldas of my great disappointment in not finding some few words, or even a single word of a language unknown to the wisest heads of the upper world. Shinabul was so touched by my sadness that had I not skilfully kept out of her way, I verily believe she would have thrown her arms around my neck and imprinted upon my cheek the kiss which would have made me the king of the Colticorps. But I had no longing to spend the rest of my life in the icy domains of his frigid majesty, even though my brow would be crowned with the cold crown of the Colticorps. If I had been an old man with slow and feeble pulse, it would have been very different, but my heart was too warm and my blood too hot to fill such a position with agreeableness to myself or satisfaction to the people of this icy underworld. So I kept the little princess busy enough, I can assure you, first with songs, then with dance, and then with storytelling. That night, King Geldas ordered a magnificent fete to be held in my honor. 500 more alabaster lamps were lighted, and the royal divans were laid with the richest pelts in the palace. And after the dancing and singing had ended, frozen tidbits from the royal kitchen were passed around on alabaster salvers, and Bulger and I ate until our teeth ached. It was late when we reached our apartment, and so full were my thoughts of the beautiful sights which we had gazed upon in the throne room that I had quite forgotten about the poor little man with the frozen smile, whom I'd covered up and tucked away on my divan. But Bulger had not been so hard-hearted. 20 times during the evening he had given me a sly tug at my sleeve, as much to say, "Come, little master, let's hurry back. Dost not remember that we left poor little frozen brother tucked away in that icy chamber all alone by himself?" I was very weary, and I fell off to sleep almost immediately, and yet I had an indistinct Okay, there's one of the pelts. Look. Oh boy. Almost looks like, let's see. Bulger shows the Baron something wonderful. Let's get to the next page. Recollection that Bulger was not in his place against my breast. I remember feeling for him, but that's all. It never flashed upon me that he had gone and lain down beside the poor little stranger, whom I had so unfeelingly lifted from his last resting place. And yet such must have been the case, for about midnight, it seemed to me, I was awakened by a gentle tugging at my sleeve. It was my faithful Bulger, but half awake and half asleep as I was, I merely thought that he was only asking for a caress, as was often his wont when he fell a thinking about home. So I reached out and stroked his head several times and dropped off again. But the tugging began anew, and this time 'twas more vigorous, and with it came an impatient whine, which meant, "Come, come, little master, rouse thee. Dost suppose I wouldn't break thy rest unless there was good reasons for it?" I didn't need a third reminder, but with a single bound landed on my feet, and reaching out for one of the tiny tapers which the Koltykwerps make use of as lighters, I carried the flame from the single lamp burning on the wall to the 3 others hanging here and there. The icy walls of my chamber were now ablaze with light. There sat Bulger on the full fur-covered divan beside the palace where the little man with the frozen smile lay hidden under the pelt. His tail was wagging nervously, and his large, lustrous eyes were fixed first upon me and then upon the covering of his dead brother, with an expression I never remembered having seen in them before. And then with a sudden movement he laid hold of the pelt and drawing it aside showed me, what think you, dear friends, what I ask in a tone half whisper, half gasp, for now years after I can still feel the wonderful thrill which I felt then. Why, it was alive! That ape-like creature had come to life after his sleep for thousands of years in that narrow crystal cell. Bulger had laid down beside his frozen brother and warmed him back to life again. Oh, it was wondrously wonderful to see that pair of little eyes, bead-like in brightness, look up and blink at me, and then to hear that low, moaning voice, so human-like, as if whimpered with a shake and a shiver. Oh, how cold it is, how very cold it is. Where's the sun? Where's the soft warm wind? And where are the cloudless skies so blue, oh, so beautifully blue, that used to hang over my head? Bidding Bulger lie down again beside him and snuggle up as close as possible, I made haste to cover both of them with the softest skins I could find. I'm going to try to adjust this here. In a few moments, there come from underneath the pile of low, contented cry of "Kuja, Kuja, Kuja," followed by a curious addition sounding like "Foof, foof, foof." So I put them all together and named the strange newcomer to the icy domain of King Geldas Foof's Kuja. Oh my gosh. Sleep any more that night? Not a wink. The same joy came over me that I used to feel on Christmas morning, long ago, when Kris Kringle bought me some wonderful bit of mechanism moved by a secret spring. For I always scorned to accept ordinary toys like ordinary children, and oh, how I longed for the morning when it would be time for me to bundle up the little man, no longer him, with the frozen smile, but Fuch Kucha. Oh, I'm going to have trouble saying this one too. The live boy from far away, with his curious little face screwed up in such a funny look, and carry him to the palace. How delighted Shinaboo will be, thought I, and King Geldas too. How he will unbend from his frigid majesty as he watches the antics of Foof Kuja, and how pleased all the dignified Qualtiquerpians, including even Frosty Fitz and Glacier Boy, will be when I tell them that the little man with the frozen smile has come to life again. What crowds of Culticorp's men, women, and children will rush up the long flights of steps leading to the ice palace, begging and entreating King Geldus to let them have just a little look at Fufkuja, the little man set free from his icy cell by the famous traveler Baron Sebastian von Trump. Okay, well, thank you for listening. Until next time, appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or night. Sweet dreams. Bye.